Tom Kozlowski, Gaz and Wolf here, 104.5 The Team and 104.5theteam.com. And joining us on the phone lines, he covers college football and racing for Yahoo Sports. You can follow him on Twitter at Nick Bromberg. Nick Bromberg joins us. And Nick, the Baylor Bears yesterday fired head football coach Art Briles. Was this a necessary move for the school?
Earlier this week, when the reports came out that Ken Starr's job was in danger, it made it feel like Briles could be safe. Obviously, Baylor released the report right after the reports emerged Thursday that Briles was fired. In that report, it's clear that some changes had to be made on the football team. So, yes, ultimately, it was necessary. But for all of the broad allegations that Baylor has outlined in the 13 pages of the summarized document that was released yesterday, we really still don't have specifics. We know of instances where the football team went outside university protocol, tried to investigate issues themselves. There was even the word retaliation. But when it comes to specifics, we don't know. But from the broad overview, definitely something had to be done.
Yeah, I'm reluctant to give Ken Starr any credit at all after deciding to prosecute a president over a cigar incident. Let's put it that way.
It was the ultimate in hypocrisy, if you wanted to look at it this way, with what's going on at Baylor and then what he did 20 years ago.
Yeah, I know. It's completely true. In spite of the success that Art had, I mean, clearly it didn't have any effect in the decision to keep him or not. Do you think he's got a future at all in college football, or is he done?
Right now, I think you have to say he's done, simply because also you look at his age. He's not a guy he's come up through the coaching ranks and has had a long career, so you're not looking at a guy that Baylor was his first job. And again, we're going to know specifics as we go down the line over the summer, and unless those specifics turn out to be much worse than the broad strokes make them out that they could be, I think Briles is ultimately, done as a head coach, and they can serve as a consultant somewhere, kind of like in a Jim Tressel mode. But as a head coach, I would bet no.
He covers college football and racing for Yahoo Sports. Nick Bromberg joins us here on 104.5 The Team. And Nick, they make the move to bring in defensive coordinator Phil Bennett to now be the head guy at Baylor, but he's been there. He's an Art Briles guy. He has connections. I thought they'd just blow the whole thing up. Are they keeping Bennett there just to have some type of stability left with that football program?
One of the things that I was, again, when the Ken Stark stuff came out, when you thought Briles could be safe earlier this week, you had to think of, okay, it's the end of May. Can you put a football staff together at the end of May and expect to have a decent season? That's the thing. Kendall Briles, offensive coordinator at Baylor, Art's son, still on the staff. And these allegations, they talk about members of the football program. Baylor said, there are people in our administration and our athletic department that didn't have public jobs. They had suffered punishments, including the loss of jobs. We're not naming them, but still, it leads you to believe that a lot of people within the football program knew about this, and a lot of people could, based off what we know so far, could have been actively involved in this. Mm-hmm. So, the head guy takes the fall for this. But you do have to wonder, based off the scope of this, should more people have also left as well?
College football fans are wondering now what's next. And I know it's almost like comparing apples and oranges, but we've seen so many other scandals across college athletics involving the NCAA. Is there anything we can compare Baylor football and this to maybe something we've seen the past 5 to 10 years and what may happen next?
The closest comparison that I can come up with, I don't think Penn State on the level of the fact that there were members of the administration that potentially knew about what was happening and things like that. But in terms of, I'm not going to go into a comparison of the crimes, but in terms of the number of people that knew and the fact that it was a university problem more than a football program, I think that's a decent comparison. And then along the lines of sexual assault, I think you could argue that this compares a little bit to Florida State and Jameis Winston in 2013. Florida State was investigated heavily for their reactions when Title IX investigations, when it came to allegations of sexual assault and how they've handled things. Baylor, the Outside Lines report, said a player who was dismissed earlier in 2015 for a team rules violation, the school had waited almost 2 years to investigate a 2013 allegation of sexual assault against him. Basically, it's kind of a mishmash of those two if you want to take some characteristics from each.
What do you think the strategy of the school was in just pushing this off? Do you think they somewhere in their boardroom, they were hoping this thing would just go away?
I think ultimately it boils down to the one sentence answer is we really like winning. And, Baylor, they went from this school that was a bad football program, and all of a sudden Art Briles had them as a top 10 program. You want to keep that winning culture, and sometimes winning can blind you. And especially, again, as you have people and you're willfully ignoring Title IX allegations, they're being sued by one of Tevin Elliott's, the woman who said she was sexually assaulted by Tevin Elliott. You look at this and say, how much of the drug of football success got people high in the Baylor program?
Nick, we're going to move away from Baylor football because I want something to look forward to over college football. This is almost a black eye to the overall sport and everything going on. And let's talk about less than 100 days away from kickoff and the running backs we see coming up in this 2016 season. Is it crazy to think that this may be, collectively as a unit, the best running backs we've seen in college football in the last maybe 25 years?
I think so, and especially, too, you look back over the last 2 and 3 years, and the running backs who have done exceptionally well and then have gone on and been drafted early rounds. The last 4 or 5 years, we had all this talk about how running backs were undervalued in football now, and that, spending a top 10 pick on a running back out of college is not a good idea. Okay, now you've got guys, Todd Gurley started it. Now you've got Ezekiel Elliott went fourth. You've got Leonard Fournette, who's going to be a top 10 pick, barring an injury this year. Next year, you've got other guys. We're running back rich right now, and so it's almost a little reversal of this trend. And I also think running backs have become a little more important, too, because now, we've gone away from the put 3 tight ends in the box. We're going to run the ball down your throat on 2nd and 3, 3rd and short. We're going to spread you out. You can find a guy that makes the right reads and is explosive enough in the open field to get away. That is very, very valuable because, you look at programs like Ohio State, Alabama, they have spread the ball out over the last 2 years. It's open lanes for Derrick Henry. These running backs are getting more and more opportunities in these so-called spread offenses.
Let's switch to racing. Indy 500, of course, this coming weekend. I had a chance I worked in Indianapolis for about 5 minutes. I realized the Midwest and myself were not a good combination. And I got to see the race from the finish line. And I've not been a big auto racing fan, but I have to tell you, the experience of being at the event, actually being there, is amazing, whether you're a fan or not. What do we have to look forward to in this year's Indy 500?
Before we talk about the racing, I think simply the spectacle. Yeah. The Indy 500, for the first time since 1950, is not blacked out locally. That means it's sold out. They're expecting a crowd potentially on Sunday of 350,000 people.
Wow.
That's insane. That is absolutely insane. I mean, they're telling people, if you want to be there and get a good parking spot and be at the track and avoid traffic, get there at 5 a.m. And that's not hyperbole. Get there at 5 a.m. And then you go back to the racing. This is going to be a fantastic race. The IndyCar Series, for all, I think the IndyCar Series needs to look at canopies for safety. For all the talk that oval racing can be very dangerous at these high speeds that these guys do, the Indy 500 with the new DW12 chassis and the aero kits on these cars has become one of the must-see auto races on the entire calendar, simply because there's 60-some passes for the lead in 2014. No one can check away from each other. There's racing going on throughout the entire field. Yes, it's a 500-mile race. Yes, it'll take 3 hours, but if you've got nothing else to do on Sunday, you turn the race on, you are going to be absolutely riveted. It will not be a blowout. I can promise that.
I think there have been 66 deaths at the Indy 500, not only drivers, but spectators as well. The oddest one was a number of years ago. Before they had all the safety nets, a tire flew off a car, went outside of the speedway, and hit a guy who was walking home. Had nothing to do with the race. Tire just came.
Wow.
Racing's crazy.
It's nuts.
Racing's crazy.
And at that track in particular, until they put in a lot of the safety, the fairly newer safety measures, there were often people that were injured at that race as spectators.
And, you're also looking at drivers. Just last year, James Hinchcliffe, the pole sitter, for this year's race, it's the best storyline I think the Indy 500 could have hoped for coming into this race. Not only it's the 100th Indy 500, all this history, but you've got a guy who last year nearly died in practice. If you're not familiar with James Hinchcliffe's injury, he hit the wall, basically pancaked the right side. And it was a crash. It was a very hard impact. But it was a crash that if you're, uninterested observer or even a big-time fan, you were like, oh, that was a hard hit. I hope he's okay. What happened was the front suspension piece on the right front side of the car went through the tub and impaled him in the thighs. It severed one of the arteries in his leg, and he was basically had to be cut out of the car. I think he said they gave him 14 pints of blood as he was rushed to the hospital for surgery to save him, and the human body, he said, can hold 12.
Yeah.
So, the Indy 500 safety crew did a heck of a job getting him straight from the car to the hospital, get to the medical center. But, you look at that, this is still a very dangerous sport.
Nick, we'll get you out of here on this. Get us a winner. Who's going to win the Indy 500 this weekend?
I'm going with Simon Pagenaud. He's won 3 races this year so far. I think it's going to be a Penske or a Ganassi car that does it. Pagenaud is my guy, is my pick. If not him, Will Power. And if Will Power wins, he's going to have the craziest victory lane celebration you've ever want to see. That man is dying to win the Indy 500.
One thing, too, about the Indy 500, I think 350,000 biggest live sporting event in this country, anywhere?
Not even close. The Kentucky Derby's second at about 165, 170,000. So, not even close.
It's going to be an amazing event this weekend. Make sure to follow him on Twitter at Nick Bromberg. He covers college football and racing for Yahoo Sports. Nick, enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the Indy 500, and we'll talk again soon. Take care.
Pleasure, Nick.
Sounds great. Thanks so much.